Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Afghan Nifty with the Caspian Policy Center. Thank you to all those who have joined us from our third panel, and for those who are tuning in for the first time with us this morning. Welcome to our fourth and final panel of the forum on the fostering innovation and entrepreneurship in the Caspian region. The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed the vulnerabilities of business development and commerce. Pandemic-related shutdowns precipitated economic slowdowns worldwide, and it's imperative that governments encourage recovery efforts to revive their countries' economies. Uh, the pandemic has also placed a considerable burden on women and small and medium-sized enterprise owners. I'd like to turn the floor to our esteemed Ambassador Susan Elliott. Ambassador Elliott currently serves as an advisory board member of the Caspian Policy Center and previously served as the ambassador to Tajikistan and Deputy Assistant Secretary of State of the Bureau of South and Central Asian Affairs. Ambassador Elliott, good to have your moderation today for our very important panel. And I once again would like to welcome all our speakers from the Caspian region. Ambassador Elliott, floor is yours, please.
Well, thank you very much, Afghan, for inviting me to moderate what I know is going to be a great discussion today. I'd like to thank all of our participants for tuning in, and for those of you watching. We are going to have a panel today, which is topic fostering innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem. And as Efkan just mentioned, the pandemic has seriously hit not only the economies of the region, but the economies of the world. So I'm looking forward to discussing how we are able to promote and innovate entrepreneurships in the region, in Central Asia and in the Caspian. And especially we want to look at how we can promote entrepreneurship among women and in other areas like technology. We just had a great panel on energy and energy cooperation. So we're going to try to focus on other kinds of business opportunities in the region. So as I said, I'm very pleased to have such a distinguished panel, and we're going to start out with our keynote speaker, who is Harry Bader, the Deputy Assistant Administrator from the Bureau of Development, Democracy, and Innovation at the U.S. Agency for International Development. So Harry, I'd like to turn the floor over to you to give our keynote remarks.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador, and thank you to all who are on this panel. It is a pleasure to be participating with you today. So I just want to say good afternoon to everyone who's joining us from Asia and Europe, and good morning to those who are joining us in the United States. I am thrilled to have the opportunity to speak today about innovation policy. I'm going to focus primarily at first on energy policy innovation and the kind of enabling environment that makes it possible. But then I'm going to transition to talk about developing innovation ecosystems from the experience that USAID had with what was previously called the lab. It is now part of our operating unit known as Innovation, Technology, and Research. But first, I just want to say it is exciting to think about innovation when reflecting upon the words of my colleague, Acting Assistant Administrator for USAID's Bureau for Europe and Eurasia, Margot Ellis, who highlighted yesterday that the transformation of the power sector is enabling a climate that is welcoming change and innovation. Indeed, President Biden has brought the United States back into the Paris Agreement, and he has set ambitious domestic targets for achieving a 50% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions for the United States from the 2005 levels by 2013. But as the world raises its ambitions to tackle the climate crisis, whether it's in energy or emissions or in drought response, in water management, hydrology, domestic range management, the United States stands ready to partner with its countries and to support those countries not only in achieving their nationally determined contributions for fighting climate change, but also stimulating innovation in all sectors impacted by climate change, whether that be energy, public health, economic growth, or natural resources management. And in all cases, we must respect and take into account not just the climate goals, but domestic needs and respect for national sovereignty. I will close on our comments about climate and energy by noting that USAID has committed at the President's Climate Leaders Forum to develop a new USAID international strategy committed to changing the way in which USAID engages the world to tackle this crisis. And we will deliver that strategy by November 1st, 2021, through our administrator, Samantha Power, at the United Nations Climate Change Conference, known as COP22. Now I'd like to digress a little bit from talking about energy and climate to the larger ecosystem. We know that the key to innovation is powering individual initiative through education and the accumulation and protection of private investment capital to take risks on new ideas. USAID has been a leader on global development alliances where we partner with private sector industry, partner nations, the NGO community to improve and engage in the education sector, the public health sector, and the communications sector and cybersecurity, so as to provide not only access to information, but to provide information that stimulates the cauldron of ideas that is the global scientific and technological enterprise. We advocate for access to a global digital ecosystem that fosters capitalism, individual free expression, and democracy. We seek a global digital ecosystem that can stimulate investment, protect private capital, and expand the horizons of every citizen in every country. USAID has been at the forefront of expanding opportunities in countries to work together and partner with local businesses, American businesses, and academic institutions to foster that dynamic exchange of ideas. But we can do so only when the global digital ecosystem is free from tyranny and censorship and available to every citizen to access information and to engage the global discourse as to what is necessary to attract the capital, to build the businesses, to learn the lessons, and to gain understanding that will enable us to expand the ability for every citizen to take an active part in trying to solve the problems that they encounter in their country and in the region and in the world. And that is why I'm so proud that USAID has the Development Innovation Ventures program, which is intended to take any idea from anyone at any time, anywhere in the world, and on any topic, and to take a risk in investing in that person to see if it is their idea that can change the world and bring about a revolutionary leap in our understanding of a technical problem. Like my other government colleagues yesterday and today, I am proud of the partnerships that the United States, through USAID, the State Department, and others, forge in our ongoing efforts to reform the energy sector, the innovation ecosystem, and to challenge the pernicious problems of climate change, poverty, and illiteracy, and health around the world. But together, we are working to ensure peace, prosperity, and security for all the nations in the world. I'm going to stay on and participate in the conversation if asked, and I look forward to the rest of today's discussion. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you to all the panel members, and thank you, Madam Ambassador.
Well, thank you, Harry, for those great remarks. And, you know, it's really encouraging, at least for me as a former, not only ambassador, but, you know, U.S. government employee who worked very closely with USAID during my career, to hear the plans for the future that you have. You know, we always think of USAID as being in development and looking at education, health, and the agricultural sector. But to hear the talk about being, you know, dedicated for the future, looking at climate change, looking at cybersecurity, looking at the digital ecosystem, I think it's really an exciting time, not only for USAID, but, you know, for others in the region, you know, to be partners with the USAID. So thanks for the keynote remarks. Now we will get into the panel part of our discussion. And again, for our viewers, each panelist will make their remarks, and then we will answer questions from the audience. So if you do have a question, please feel free to type it into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So now I would like to turn the floor over to Orkan Mamadov, who is the chairman of the Management Board of Small and Medium Business Development in the Republic of Azerbaijan. So, Mr. Chairman, over to you.
Dear panelists, esteemed participants, firstly, on behalf of a Small and Medium Business Development Agency of the Republic of Azerbaijan, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to the Caspian Policy Center for the innovation to this forum. Of course, CPS has extensive experience in organizing international events on a high level which cover economic and other cooperation issues. And I would like to note the effectiveness of CPS as a platform for highlighting achievements of Azerbaijan to the wider public. And we would like to thank all SPS staff for their efforts. Speaking for my own experience, I had the honor to attend previous CPS events back in year 2018. I took part in the Caspian Innovation Summit in Boston, where our agency's delegation included representatives from local IT companies and women business owners. They benefited from a study tour to innovation centers and direct B2B contacts with related US companies. We held a number of productive meetings with the US Small Business Administration, US Commerce Department, and former Overseas Private Investment Corporation, which is now DFC. In year 2019, we participated at the second annual Caspian Business Forum in New York. We also met with New York Small and Medium Business Administration and Manhattan Chamber of Commerce. Those meetings were also quite helpful to shape initial directions for cooperation with our US counterparts. The topics of today's panel are very important. We think a recent global COVID-19 pandemic urged business community and especially SMEs to shift their focus on innovation and digitalization to ensure future sustainability. And I'm sure that our discussions will contribute to experience exchange and best related practices. Considering that micro, small, and medium businesses are the main driving forces for the modern economy, and understanding the necessity for them to adopt digital technologies, our agency has also included fostering innovation and SME ecosystem in our agenda as priority areas. With a view of creating an enabling SME environment and promote innovation, our agency has introduced various support mechanisms. We analyze current environment to make sure that our support is tailored to the need of local SMEs, including particular groups in rural areas, such as youth and women. We have a good practice in assisting them in setting up their businesses or developing existing activities. International partners and international financial institutions support us in our activities. It is worth to mention our cooperation with USAID. We are finalizing procedures to sign a joint MOU, which will cover such areas as capacity building for business associations, training for SMEs, assistance to business startups, women entrepreneurs and professional associations, establishment of e-sales and e-learning platforms, and others. Among our agency's programs, I would like to mention grants for internal market studies, research and development projects, as well as startup certificates, which provide tax incentives for young business owners. Our small and medium business houses operate as one-stop shop, offering both G2B and B2B services. Soon, an e-SMB house platform will operate in non-stop shop format. Through our SME development centers, we provide business consultancies and training to SMEs, including on innovative businesses. Tailored trainings are organized for particular focus groups, such as youth and women. The main purpose of this support is to equip potential and current businesses people with the right skills and knowledge to make sure that their businesses succeed. Also, we have launched a new e-commerce portal designed primarily to sell products and services of SMEs through a single online platform. This platform encourages SMEs to take advantage of online sales opportunities, both within the country, and promote sales of their product overseas. Social business projects are also part of our work. We already initiated a number of social projects aimed at empowering women and families in the district of Baku. Later, we plan to cover the whole country. We also launched 2 production facilities and employed particularly women, increasing their professional skills. Dear participants, our agency is interested in cooperation with CPC and participant countries. Referring to our last month's meeting with CPC delegation in Baku, I would like to share some proposal for our future cooperation agenda. First of all, the government of Azerbaijan is focused on development of the liberated Karabakh territories. Agency is working on eligible projects where foreign investors can participate. We are ready, first of all, to provide all necessary coordination and support. Potential of the Karabakh region can also be promoted in CPS magazine. In the framework of regional cooperation, we propose to coordinate our joint efforts to foster innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem through special working group on SMEs. CPS can also assist in establishing direct connection with local and US companies to create joint partnership in participating countries. If taken locally, our agency will guide interested companies through all steps, including consulting, obtaining permissions, conducting market research. Our agency is always open for joint cooperation. Thank you.
Sorry, had to get off the mute. Well, thank you very much for those very detailed comments, and I'm really pleased to hear, how much the government of Azerbaijan is doing, especially in the area of rural and women and youth development and entrepreneurship. So I'd now like to go to our next speaker, who is Avtandil Kazaradze, who's the head of Georgia's Innovation and Technology Agency. So Mr. Kazaradze, over to you.
Hello once again, everyone. I hope everyone hears me. So it's my pleasure to be here and to speak with all of you. Government of Georgia definitely prioritized innovation and technology for the further development of our country, our economy. We think that to support innovations, this is only way to jumpstart economic growth of Georgia. We want to capitalize from the intellectual potentials that exist in Georgia. Georgia is a small country. We don't have, we are not very rich with natural resources. So our only potential is to develop innovation. and capitalize from human capital. So this is where we are aiming with all the support programs that we are having in Georgia. That's why government of Georgia, even though it was late, but still established Georgia's Innovation and Technology Agency in 2014 to develop knowledge and innovation-driven economy in country. And we started several programs together with our international partners. Definitely US Embassy was one of the big supporters and is one of the big supporters in all stages of our programs. USAID, also World Bank is our major donor who is supporting all major innovative activities here in Georgia already more than 4 years. And then we are continuing on this direction because we brought in Georgia the most importantly not only foreign money but foreign experience, which is very important to properly work with the new initiatives, new ideas, startup ideas. The one thing that should be mentioned that in all stages of innovations that we are supporting here in Georgia by our agency, there are several other agencies who are supporting local innovations, but we as a Georgia's Innovation and Technology supporting, we are only supporting innovative ideas who has global scalability potential. So if they don't have, it's not our mandate to support it. So that's why in whole process, we 100% outsource the decision-making process. Government of Georgia is not involved in any sense of who will be getting the financial support from the government of Georgia. We have US colleagues in private sector who is supporting us in direction. US accelerators who are coming here in Georgia and they are selecting these startups. Also US venture and angel investors who are coming in Georgia. Big caliber investors like Vice President of the Oracle, CEO of the Catapult Venture Fund, and etc. So big names are coming here in Georgia and they are making decisions. They are meeting startups, they are evaluating startups, and they are making the final decisions. And then we are awarding grants to those startups. Also, one of the things that should be mentioned that we opened the regional-wide accelerator program from US Silicon Valley, 500 startup accelerator program entered in Georgia, and then we opened doors also for startups from neighboring countries as well. So for close neighbors, but a lot of other countries also participated, for example, from Balkan countries or Baltic countries, and Ukraine, Azerbaijan, Armenia, and other startups who participated in the program, and we are definitely supporting in this direction. One of the things that should be mentioned that government of Georgia prioritized also ICT industry as one of the major industry for further development of the country. And recently, 6 months ago, actually, we introduced the new tax incentives for IT companies who are opening offices here in Georgia and have customers outside of Georgia. So those companies will benefit huge tax incentives. They are not paying any taxes for VAT and property taxes. And two other taxes that is payable, we reduced income taxes from the salaries of their employees, which was even low in Georgia, flat 20%, but we reduced it to 5%. So IT companies will pay only 5% from the salaries to their employees. And also we reduced tax for dividends, also from 15% to only 5%. So this is huge tax incentives, and also it led to big US IT company opened offices and employed already 500 people here in Georgia. Some of the people, they even relocated from the neighboring countries and they live in Georgia and they work in Georgian companies. So we have opened our policy, we have open economy and in innovation as well. So we are supporting very much all the initiatives that will support Georgia to be part of this international cooperation, because as I mentioned, we only supporting innovative ideas who have global potential. So we need to have a network outside of the country. And that's why cooperation with United States, also government level, but most importantly, I would say with private sector, with venture funds and with accelerators are vital for further development of Georgia. We actually started massive financing support schemes for the innovative companies from 2018. And we did not spend a lot of money, actually. The direct money that was given from us to the startups is only 15 million Georgian lari, 15. But last 2 years, we had amazing investment return from those startups who actually developed their startup projects and raised further international investment, mainly from US, but also from European Union, from Netherlands, from Belgium, and from UK as well. But main investors that they found in US. And so all those 4 years, we only spent 15 million lari. In the last 2 years, and in the first 2 years, there was no result. I mean, they were not ready for the private investment. But then they developed themselves to the stage that they were ready for the investments. And last year, in COVID crisis year, they raised 35 million Georgian lari, which is 20 million more than we invested in this whole 4 years. And this year, in these first 5 months, they raised more than 100 million Georgian lari as a private investment. So even though we are early ecosystem with regard to the innovation, we think that this is one of the aspects that Georgia could be, and we hope it will be very successful in nearest future, because we are studying how to do it, and we are with open arms receiving help from international colleagues, and we as a government, we are not making decisions. This is one of the most important factors to have a credibility, not to have any risk of the corruption or impartiality. And with support of our international partners, with World Bank, we are happy to continue to develop innovation ecosystem here in Georgia. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Kazradzi. I mean, I think that's an extremely interesting things that you're doing in Georgia, especially looking at incentives for startups that are involved in global business. So I'd like to now turn the discussion over to our colleague from the Republic of Kazakhstan, Lazat Ramazanova, who is the chairman of the National Commission on Women's Affairs and Family Demographic Policy. So over to you.
Добрый вечер. Очень интересное обсуждение идет на площадке. Я второй год подряд получаю приглашения, и в этом году впервые сама участвую. Ну, наверное, про Казахстан очень много можно говорить, но я бы сказала ключевую вещь о том, что гражданское общество в Казахстане, в частности, наверное, женщины, они занимают все более увереннее позиции на уровне истеблишмента страны. Наверное, показателем можно взять, ну, элементарно, наверное, пример нашей организации, которую я представляла до того, пока заняла пост председателя Национальной комиссии по делам женщин при президенте. Вы меня приглашали в прошлом году в качестве руководителя Совета деловых женщин Палаты предпринимателей Казахстана. Это действительно независимая организация, бизнес-структура. Организация была создана по принципу континентальной модели палат предпринимателей, как германская, австрийская палата. И буквально в прошлом году вот с гражданского сектора перешла на уровень государственный. Это действительно, наверное, говорит о том, что женщины-предприниматели в Казахстане сегодня увереннее занимают позиции в малом среднем бизнесе. Это 42% женщин, руководителей предприятий. А если мы возьмем, что в целом статистику Казахстана, то 52% населения – это женщины. Теперь давайте другую сторону возьмем. Были сделаны ключевые две поправки в 2 закона Казахстана президентом в прошлом году поправка о введении 30% квоты. И все партии, которые в прошлом году участвовали в предвыборной гонке на занятия портфелей в Нижней палате парламента, обязаны были в соответствии с 2 поправками в своих списках 30% должны были состоять из женщин и молодежи. Сегодня Нижняя палата парламента 27% женщины. Но это стало очень хорошим подспорьем именно в регионах. 17 регионов Казахстана, свыше 200, порядка 200 районов, это органы представительной власти региональные. Там у нас картина очень в сторону, скажем так, гендерно-чувствительных вопросов развернулась, а в частности у нас на районном уровне, областном уровне уровень представленности женщин до 32%. А я хочу сказать, что региональные маслихаты у нас формируют на 70% верхнюю палату парламента. То есть здесь налицо, наверное, уже более прогрессивный метод действительно квотирования, продвижения женщин. Очень интересный случай, вот лично на моей практике был, когда мы привлекли частные инвестиции для придания женскому предпринимательству более массовый характер. То есть порядка 3 миллиардов частных инвестиций тенге за последние 3 года сделали у нас крупные банки Казахстана. Инвестировали конкретно в женское предпринимательство. Оно дает свой эффект, конечно же, не сразу, потому что мы сконцентрированы были выделять кредитные средства на льготных условиях женщинам в сельской местности. Как итог вот этого 3-летнего кредитования женской кредитной линии за счет частных инвестиций у нас стал такой проект, который женщины уже внутри, регионально скооперировавшись, сделали. Это проект «Одно село, один продукт». Его сейчас рассматривают на дальнейшую поддержку и масштабирование в Казахстане и на приграничный, может быть, регион, Азиатский банк развития и программа ПРООН. Ну, скажем так, мы для себя определили, женщины-предприниматели, основной показатель. Это самое главное, наверное, какие сферы займут женщины в рамках этого проекта. Какой продукт то или иное село выберет как базовый для себя. Как механизм или инструмент выбрали модель кооперации. И самое удивительное, что модель в Казахстане очень хороший закон о кооперации. Но мы, предприниматели, всегда говорили, что очень много хороших законов, но они должны предельно просто работать. Администрирование должно быть самым простым образом расставлено. Поэтому мы надеемся, что женская кооперация – это тот самый, наверное, инструмент, который поможет с минимальными финансовыми вливаниями использовать внутренний потенциал женщин-предпринимателей. Это вот как один из бизнес-проектов, который у нас сейчас идет. Но как уже придя на должность председателя национальной комиссии, мы постарались все-таки привлечь государственные инвестиции на программы обучения женщин. Это очень важно. Я хочу еще с одним кейсом поделиться. Сегодня была встреча с афганскими женщинами-парламентариями. Я просто не могу здесь не сказать, потому что это была их боль. Я хотела бы ее сегодня вам тоже передать. Они очень обеспокоены тем, что сейчас безопасность женщин в Афганистане, она на грани, скажем так, очень серьезной проблемы не только страновой, но и, наверное, региональной. Казахстан с 2009 года поддерживает афганских женщин. Мы в рамках своих внутренних грантов помогали обучаться молодым людям в вузах страны, нашей страны. В 2017 году поддержал еще Узбекистан. тоже представили бесплатные гранты. И Европейский Союз совместно вот с 2 государствами мы сделали этот совместный проект, в рамках которого 50 девушек сейчас обучаются в общей сложности в наших странах. Я надеюсь, что вот площадка, которую вы создали, она не будет ограничиваться каспийским сотрудничеством. Понимаете, безопасность в регионе – это безопасность в именно тех точках, где женщины больше всего нуждаются в поддержке. Поэтому я очень надеюсь, что эта площадка как-то посодействует или услышит, может быть, через меня, то, в какой тяжелой обстановке сейчас находятся афганские женщины. Мы со своей стороны хотели бы, чтобы трансграничное сотрудничество каспийских стран приняло, я надеюсь, после пандемии это будет больше масштабировано, скажем так, в офлайн формате, наверное, больше на межрегиональное сотрудничество. Женщинам очень нужны онлайн-торговые площадки. Существующие системы, существующие онлайн-маркетплейсы, они не доступны для женщин сельских. Поэтому мы предлагали со своей стороны создать какие-то, ну, я не знаю, мы предлагали на базе казахстанского регионального хаба ООН создать центр гендерных инициатив. Гендерные инициативы для решения проблем женщин в разных сферах. Понимаете, счастливая женщина – это совокупность счастья в семье, успешный бизнес и уверенность в будущем. Обеспечить ее только через предпринимательство невозможно. Поэтому я вот призываю вас всех, наверное, сгруппировать наилучшие практики через информационный хаб поддержки совместный. Это мы готовы сформулировать и переслать в вашу штаб-квартиру, в какой форме она может функционировать, кто может в ней участвовать и какие знания от наших коллег на данной платформе будут полезны. То есть совместная онлайн-площадка нам нужна. Спасибо.
You can start to wrap up I really like what you're saying, but we need to get back. We can ask questions more when we get into the discussion period. So, извините. Well, anyway, thank you, Chairman Ramazanova, for those very important remarks. And having worked in Central Asia, not only as ambassador, but then as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for the region, I've known that Kazakhstan has always been a leader in innovation and entrepreneurship and promoting women in these. And I'll ask you more questions when we get into the Q&A period. But now I'd like to go to Malika Jurakalova, who is the USAID Gender Advisor at the US Embassy in Dushanbe, Tajikistan, and a very good friend and colleague of mine. So over to you, Malika.
Thank you. Good morning, dear Deputy Assistant Administrator, Ambassador Elliott, panelists, and Caspian Policy Center colleagues and friends. Thanks, Ambassador, for providing such an opportunity to speak on the general situation of women's entrepreneurship in Tajikistan at this conference. With your permission, I would like to give an overview of female entrepreneurship in Tajikistan and later embark on the existing gaps and recommendations. So the development of this sphere started in 2010 when the issue of entrepreneurship was raised in our country. Simultaneously, the notion of female entrepreneurship emerged and the state program on supporting entrepreneurship for 2012-2020 was developed. This program also included the requirement to create the task force on women's entrepreneurship under the State Investment Committee. And this type of working group was created in 2015. This task force comprises all the key stakeholders, including development partners, state entities, private sector, and civil society organizations. USAID Tajikistan mission is one of the key stakeholders of this group. Within the framework of this task force on women's entrepreneurship, a series of barriers and obstacles have been addressed throughout all these years. One of the initial major gaps raised was the lack of statistics on female entrepreneurship, and luckily now we have detailed statistics on women's entrepreneurship within the statistical agency. As a result of improved statistics, we have got more analytical information on entrepreneurship, which helps us to track changes in the number of female-owned enterprises. For example, just for your information, if in 2015, the number of women-owned businesses were over 47,000, by 2020, this number was over 77,000, which means for the 5 years between 2015 and 2020, the number of women-owned enterprises increased by 62%. The National Bank of Tajikistan developed the statistics with gender consideration, and we can track how much loans were given to women to start or expand their businesses. In 2015, about 1,273,000,000 somoni were given as loans to women, and in 2020, the amount was over 2 billion somoni. Also, the share of women in the general credits portfolio was 10% in 2015, and in 2020, it was 20.8%. Also, another milestone and achievement of this task force is the annual regional and international women's business forum conducted in Tajikistan. The USAID has been the major donor of this event each year. Through our USAID-funded activities in Tajikistan and Central Asia, we promote women's economic empowerment, including female entrepreneurship. This year, the task force dimensions were expanded to include not only female entrepreneurs, but also youth and people with disabilities. The current task force developed a program for 2021-2022, which identifies the priority issues. And one of the priority areas is provision of access to finance. So here, in terms of access to finance, I would like to mention about the presidential grants for female entrepreneurs, which are managed by the Committee on Women and Family Affairs of Tajikistan. So the grants program started in 2017 and ended in 2020, but it was agreed that it will be again given during 2021. Also, I would like to mention the role of civil society organizations in the development of women's entrepreneurship, which resulted on removing taxes on the goods produced at home. Also, I would like to state that according to the Women, Business and the Law report of the World Bank, which was released in 2021, Tajikistan ranks highest among all the countries of Central Asia and Afghanistan in terms of laws and regulations envisaged to promote women's economic empowerment. Well, we are trying really hard to promote this women's entrepreneurship in Tajikistan, but however, there are still some gaps I would like to speak about. First is women's access to finance, and the analysis of gender consideration in the midterm development program for 2016-2020 also showed that women receive loans twice less than men from formal financial institutions. Also, women's financial illiteracy and limited knowledge and skills on business management. Implementation of presidential grants program has showed us that the applications that are submitted to the committee are of low quality. There are no legal normative basis on social entrepreneurship in Tajikistan, and there is no definition of social entrepreneurship, but we really need to develop social entrepreneurship in our country, especially in rural areas where about 70% of the population lives. The lack of childcare centers, especially in rural areas, which limits women's ability to be engaged in business or the workforce. And also, COVID-19 pandemic imposed movement restrictions across the country and outside of Tajikistan. And the world practice during COVID has proved the importance of utilization of e-commerce and digital tools such as internet shops, delivery services, and etc. Unfortunately, due to internet price, which is really high, and the digital commerce is not developed in our country. The analysis of formative research conducted by the USAID-funded Women's Entrepreneurship for Economic Development project showed that women are not self-confident and they lack self-confidence, self-advocacy skills. The mentality and the social norms on the role of women in the household and lack of support from the family members affect women's workforce engagement. And the low capacity on business management due to absence of dialogue between the state and the private sector, lack of knowledge on legal aspects and taxation, and lack of consultative services for business management. And right now, I would like to share the list of recommendations that were developed by the members of the Task Force on Women's Entrepreneurship. First is developing the legal normative basis on social entrepreneurship and develop social business, establishing the childcare centers, especially in rural areas. Women in rural areas state that they can't leave their households because of the childcare responsibilities, promoting and strengthening of mentorship programs, especially in rural areas. Also, mentors need to strengthen their own knowledge and get additional skills too. Promotion of e-commerce and digital services in women's entrepreneurship, also access to those new technologies. Creation of state support programs for women's entrepreneurship in terms of providing preferential loans, providing training opportunities on business management skills, self-advocacy, and self-confidence, especially for women in rural areas. This is it for now, and I can answer your questions during the Q&A session. Thank you for your time and attention.
Well, thank you, Malika. It really makes my heart feel good to hear all the wonderful things that are happening in Tajikistan in terms of promoting women's entrepreneurship. And I know that you, and through the US government and USAID's close cooperation with the government, you know, things are have really moved forward. But there's still a lot of work to do, and I look forward to having more questions to talk with you about that. So let me go to our final speaker, who is Idor Tulyakov he's the Executive Director of Development Strategy in Uzbekistan. So Mr. Tulyakov, over to you.
Thank you very much, dear Ambassador Elliott, dear participants. I'd like to thank Caspian Policy Center for extending the invitation and the opportunity given. Innovation is important. If you look at institution-wise, Uzbekistan established its own Ministry of Innovation Development in 2017 in order to ensure that accelerated innovative development happens in all sectors. Innovation happens in many areas, but more probably via digitalization. Many years ago at Heathrow Airport, I came across with an ad saying in future goods will not be transported, but transmitted. So this became true today. So today we don't have to transport our bodies, but we just transmit our data and can still exchange ideas, services, and knowledge products. In this aspect, the development of telecommunications and information technologies plays a significant role in expanding digital economy. At present and in the future, the competitiveness of the country in the global economy depends on the level and quality of information technologies. In Uzbekistan, the telecommunications infrastructure is dynamically developing. Just looking at data, the length of laid fiber optic communication lines has grown by almost 4 times, from 17.9 to 68.6 thousand kilometers. So by the end of 2021, we expect it will be doubled, increasing to 118,000 kilometers. The expansion of the network of base stations of mobile communications made it possible to create conditions for the provision of services of mobile communications for 98% of the country's population, so including high-speed communications up to 90%. At the same time, further work is being carried out to achieve modern communication standards, for example, such as 5G. Since September 2019, 2 local mobile operators, Uzmobile and Ucell, have begun test trials of 5G technology, and currently 15 5G base stations are operating in test mode in Tashkent. As the number of mobile subscribers since 2016 has grown by 20% to 25.4 million people, and the number of internet users has almost doubled to 22.5 million people. Since 2016, the speed of the international data transmission network has been increased almost 22 times. At the same time, the cost of tariffs for internet services for providers decreased 21 times. Turning to digital economy, I need to mention that the volume of services provided in the IT sector increased by almost 2 times in 2020 compared to 2016. In terms of vision, the strategy Digital Uzbekistan 2030 was approved, which provides for the implementation of over 280 projects for the digital transformation of regions and sectors of the country's economy in the next 2 years. The digital transformation of the banking sector will continue, including automated management systems and financial technologies. For the digitalization of agricultural sector, more than $600 million will be attracted to introduce modern agricultural technologies and innovative solutions. One of the main policy documents that determine the vector of digitalization development in Uzbekistan is the resolution of the President of the Republic of Uzbekistan on measures for the widespread introduction of digital economy and electronic government. According to the document, it's planned to increase the share of digital economy in the country's GDP twice by 2023, and the volume of services in this area 3 times. Few words about the application of IT in healthcare sector. The digitalization process in Uzbekistan has especially accelerated over the past 2 years. During the period of the pandemic, we were able to rethink the importance of introduction of innovative solutions into healthcare sector as well. On February 2021, the President signed a decree on measures for the effective organization of digitalization in the healthcare sector. So we created a new company, IT-Med, under the Ministry of Health. It will be devoted to developing information systems for hospitals, clinics, and other medical institutions. Another important development in this aspect is the information system called Compulsory Health Insurance, which will be developed and implemented. According to the Presidential Decree, Uzbekistan will completely switch to the compulsory health insurance system by 2025. So by this time, it's planned to fully implement the e-health project. At the same time, the state health insurance system will continue to be financed, but we will figure out how the system works, and all problems will be identified. Citizens will have a guaranteed package of medical services. Finally, a promising areas for combining the efforts of the countries of the Caspian region in the field of informatization and digital economy for the coming years may be development of information technologies in the customs sphere to simplify the registration and control of goods turnover, development and implementation of software in the financial sector to simplify the use and receipt of financial services in the Caspian countries, and cooperation between countries in the IT industry, so the creation of joint programs and technoparks with involvement of leading specialists from both sides. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And, I want to first correct a mistake that I made because our speaker is Umed Abidkadajev. So, Umed, please forgive me for introducing the wrong name. And he is the Director of Institute of Forecasting and Macroeconomic Research in Uzbekistan. So please accept my sincere apologies, because I think what you just have indicated is the very good work that the government and the people of Uzbekistan are doing in looking at innovative technologies. And we have several questions in the Q&A, but I think I'd want to start out with, and this can be for everyone, but I know that Mr. Kazradzi talked about tax incentives in Georgia to attract, international business, but also Malika and Lazat talked about access to finance for women. But I guess I'm wondering, and this can be for any of our participants, but how are some of the other countries handling access to finance, not only for women who I think face bigger challenges than perhaps men do, but for youth and for other people in rural areas? And this can be for any of our panelists, but does anyone, for example, maybe Mr. Kazradzi or even Harry, is that something that USAID focuses on, trying to help people get access to to financing? Because you can have a great idea and you can certainly, but actually putting it into practice requires getting financial support. So is there anyone who maybe in the panel would want to address that? Or maybe Mr. Kazradzi, in addition to tax advantages in Georgia, do you try to help people find financing?
Sure, of course. I mean, tax incentives is one of the aspects that we are supporting companies, but we are directly investing money to the startups. As I mentioned, that we have international evaluation system, international investors who are making decisions, but we are giving our money, governmental budget money. And we already spent more than 15 million Georgian lari, which directly put into the startups who has innovation ideas, and all of them are grants. It's not investment. We don't take any equity, but we do have the major focus of the women entrepreneurship and women, especially in STEM direction, in science, technology, engineering, mathematics. We have a specially dedicated training programs, boot camps for school pupils, for the university students, and young women entrepreneurs in order for them to engage in our activities. And I'm very proud to say that in our activities, women participation was in 2015 32%. Right now it's a 53% in all our program. And in our grants, the women participation was only 15%. Right now it's 40%. So we are actually seeing the good trends that women are involved in the innovation ecosystem, and this is something that we want to capitalize on that direction, and definitely. So this is the area that we are focusing from in Georgia.
That sounds great. Thank you. And I think it's extremely important. And I think as Ms. Ramazanova and Malika also pointed out, that women, and this has been my experience from being in the region and even in the US and other places in the world, that if you take a chance on a woman, women are usually very good at repaying their loans, but they're not experienced in asking for loans. So it's extremely important, I think, to give opportunities to women entrepreneurs. One other question I have before I go to the Q&A, it has to do with regional coordination. You know, this is the Trans-Caspian Forum. And one of the things that I like about working with the Caspian Policy Center is that, you know, they're trying to connect the countries of the region. And I know when I worked in the region, that was one of the issues, at least among the countries of Central Asia, is that they didn't, you know, there wasn't a lot of trade and work among the countries, let alone, you know, crossing the Caspian into Azerbaijan and Georgia. So I'm wondering if anyone could talk a little bit about, and maybe our colleague either, you know, from Central Asia, how you're able, or do you have programs that not only try to attract business to yourself, but are you working with other countries in the region to attract business that would be not just global, but that...
Можно будет, да, Казахстан?
Yeah, Kazakhstan, yeah.
Казахстан. Я просто расскажу кейс в рамках Азиатского банка развития. Мы вот второй год подряд реализуем проект по поддержке легкой промышленности. Объясню, почему легкая промышленность. 90% этой отрасли в любой стране Центральной Азии – это женщины. И в рамках нашего проекта мы сделали специальные обучающие курсы для женщин региональных и сделали 2 форума для руководителей предприятий легкой промышленности Кыргызстан, Узбекистан, Казахстан, Таджикистан. К сожалению, пандемия просто свела на ноль наши планы. Но в рамках вот наработанной платформы по поддержке легкой промышленности мы, например, взяли очень много позитивного опыта от наших узбекских коллег. Я очень сожалею, но господин Умид, да, вы очень много рассказали про цифровизацию, но про то, какие хорошие вещи ваши женщины сделали, я не услышала в вашем выступлении. Реально, то, что делает Узбекистан для поддержки легкой промышленности, он стоит того, чтобы его применяли в других странах. Я просто хотела вот это сказать. И мы, например, вот на этой площадке в рамках работы с АБРом пришли к необходимости целого развития кластера, межрегионального кластера. То есть есть потенциал у каждой страны, скажем так, экспорта первичной продукции, импорта фурнитуры и производства каких-то больших локальных производственных линеек. Я очень надеюсь, что меня правильно перевели. К сожалению, я понимаю английский язык, но говорю лучше на немецком. Поэтому мы бы хотели, чтобы такие проекты, если поддержит USAID, именно в легкой промышленности, оно было бы интересно для всех стран, вот, по крайней мере, Центральной Азии, как женский бизнес.
Having trouble unmuting there. Well, thank you very much. I think that is a really important point to look at, because I do think sometimes women are forgotten, and I'm glad we're doing this panel today. In fact, you have answered one of the questions that one of our viewers posted about how did the pandemic affect the ability to do training and to do business. And I think the one thing that it probably points out is the importance of not just doing training in person, but having access to the internet and allowing women, and women, men, and people in rural areas to do online training. We have another question, and I'll go, and this is for Mr. Abidhak Jayev. And the question is about Uzbekistan. And has Uzbekistan looked at, and this could be a question for any of you, but it was directed to you, how has Uzbekistan looked at reducing poverty? Do you approach it differently in the urban area versus the rural area?
Thank you very much. Yes, actually, the issue of poverty reduction become a major focus of a new administration. We also renamed our Ministry of Economy and Industry to the Ministry of Economic Development and Poverty Reduction. And as you might know, last week we announced our preliminary estimations of the minimum poverty income levels using basic cost method. As we might know, there are different approaches. The one which is used by World Bank, it is the international poverty line. And finally, we managed to come up with a national poverty line, which will help us to create a filter through which we can identify a person in a poverty group or who is in the risk of coming into this group. And thanks to this, we can adjust social policy and economic policy and other policies to make sure that we can elevate as many people as possible out of poverty. Coming to the question about urban and rural, of course, depending on the context, there were different approaches used. For example, if it's in the urban area, we created such centers called monomarkas, where people can go and for free of charge, they can learn different set of skills, very practical skills, like how to be a good waiter, how to cook, how to, how could I say, involved in the clothing business, in restaurant business, in tourism, and how they can learn many foreign languages. That can be done in a very short period of time and free of charge. When it comes to the rural areas, the approach was going through agricultural sector because it's the most closest one, and I think it was a Food and Agricultural Organizations estimates also says that increasing the development in the agricultural sector can decrease the poverty level to 1.5%. So in this sense, the approach was used via, for example, subsidizing the construction of greenhouses where people can actually engage in a practical work and grow their own plants. And then there were some assistance on helping them how to cultivate them, how to keep them safe from different plant diseases. And also there was some special free spaces provided them where they can actually sell them in the bazaars and the local market. This was one of the approach. But of course, Uzbekistan has hopes to eradicate the poverty also via education, because this is one of the major reformers and the founders of modern Japan. Yukichi Fukuzawa once said that the difference between a rich and poor person is in the knowledge. And we're expecting to have a demographic dividend because more than around 60% of the people in Uzbekistan are young, they're under 18 years old. And this young population, this young energy multiplied with IT, digitalization, and with a broad worldview and tolerance, I think that this can create lots of value added, and we can alleviate, we can reduce the poverty to the maximum level. This is the future prospect. Thank you.
I'm not on mute, but that's actually very, very good. And, I think it demonstrates the importance of looking at a wider approach that, people in rural areas, especially who are engaged in, may not have access to the internet, but engaged in the agricultural economy, need special assistance. So one of the other questions that we have, and this is something that I know USAID and the State Department worked on when I worked for the US government, is interregional cooperation with women's entrepreneurship networks. And I know that, we tried to create those, and I don't know if perhaps, either Malika or Lazat may talk about are there networks that are among the women of not only Central Asia, but I know we tried to connect to women in Afghanistan and to women across the Caspian in Azerbaijan or in Georgia. Are there any established networks? Maybe Malika, can you take that question?
Yes, sure. Thanks, Ambassador. Yeah, as I already stated, within the Women's Entrepreneurship Task Force, it has become already as a tradition that every year we conduct the Regional Women's Business Forum. So this forum is not only, and one of the major donor is the USAID and the US Embassy, and I would like to state that it's not the regional connectivity only among the countries of Central Asia, but quite often we invite the female entrepreneurs from Afghanistan. Like a couple of times, also we invited the female entrepreneurs, Afghan female entrepreneurs who reside in Tajikistan. So those people who have the refugee status and they are engaged in handicrafts, in personal business, in beauty business. So we usually try to bring those people to our events because this is so much important for the networking opportunities and as well as for meeting new donors. So this is what I wanted to say in terms of the regional connectivity. Also, Madam Ambassador, I just wanted to say about the question you asked about the preferential loans, because we had such program within one of the local banks of Tajikistan, and it was funded by the EBRD. So basically, the thing is that if women want to start their business, if it's a female-owned enterprise, in this case, they can get their credits or loans, and the interest rate is only 4 or 5% in dollars. While if just like in a normal situation, if you want to open your business and expand your business and get those loans, the interest rate is from 12 to 18% in dollars and from 20 to 27% if it's in Tajik somoni. So yes, so this is really a huge difference and it makes sense to have this type of preferential loans for women. So they can start or they can basically expand their businesses, because every time when I speak with women and with female entrepreneurs, really experienced ones who have 20 years of experience of being a female entrepreneur, they always state that the interest rates are really high. And even those women who have self-confidence, who know this area very well, they always say that we need to somehow change the interest rates. Otherwise, it's really risky, not only for women, but also for men to go and get loans from the local banks. Thank you. Over.
Yeah, I would agree. For whether you're a man or a woman and having borrowed money to buy a home and to buy a car and other things, a high interest rate can really be a deterrent to being able to borrow money. So the fact that interest rates can be adjusted to help promote small business and entrepreneurship, I think is extremely important, because the interest rates that you mentioned are very prohibitive and don't allow the small business person or entrepreneur or startup to be able to borrow much money to get going. In going on, because I know this was another thing we had said we would discuss, and it has to do with the pandemic. And one of the questions from the audience is, how can entrepreneurship be utilized to advance medical security and preparedness in order to prevent or at least limit another global health threat in the future? And I mean, this could be for anyone. I know we haven't really asked a question from the Small Business Agency in Azerbaijan, but what is Azerbaijan and perhaps even other countries, what are you doing to try to, are there ways that, business can be used to try to look for ways to test, promote vaccines in the region? And does anyone have any thought for that? It can really be from anyone in the audience. Is that something, I know that President Biden announced that, the US is going to be making donations to the COVAX of vaccines, which I was very pleased to hear. And I don't know, is that something that perhaps USAID, Harry, has worked on, technology or working to try to help the countries in the region to prevent pandemic, future pandemics, or to deal with the one that we currently are facing?
Yes, thank you for this opportunity. While I myself do not directly work on the issue of COVID-19 and the pandemic, it is clear that under the leadership of we have Jeremy Conendijk, who is the Pandemic Task Force Coordinator for USAID under Samantha Power, we have been working to do a variety of things. One, of course, is the building of the public health delivery infrastructure, not only physical, but also in information so that we can get secure supply chains, because there are limitations to how the vaccines can be distributed. And we've been working with conversations with private air carriers and others to figure out, once the announced donation, I believe, I've not confirmed it through USAID, but from open source, that there's going to be a donation of 500 million vaccines to the world. What USAID is involved in, of course, is trying to build and work with the existing infrastructure and to enhance the infrastructure so that the delivery can be made to reach not only the largest number of people the most rapidly, but also, which is a particular concern of USAID, is the last mile, those folks that are hardest to reach and oftentimes the most vulnerable. I'd be happy to take on any questions and move them forward to Jeremy Conendijk, to you, Madam Ambassador, for distribution by the center to get back to you on that. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for answering that question, because I think for me, it's extremely important that we assist the countries of the region, not only in getting vaccines, but looking again for startup companies who could be involved in, medical, either provision of protective equipment, medical records, and other kinds of things that, or even emergency preparedness, so that when, hopefully not, but that if we have another type of pandemic in the future, that we're better prepared to be able, to curb the spread of the disease. So I think that's probably an extremely important area to look for companies to do startups in the medical, in medical technology. I have another question from one of our senior advisors. It's Ambassador Sakuda, who was U.S. Ambassador to Azerbaijan. And he mentions, and this goes back to, the importance of education, especially for women, but also for anyone who is young and perhaps lives in a rural area. But that in Azerbaijan, he mentioned that there were, the U.S. had what we called American corners. They were places where local residents could go, not just to learn about the US, but they also had access. If you didn't have access to the internet at home, there were English language classes and, access to internet. But I know we had that we had a very robust program in Tajikistan, but I'm wondering, are there other, whether with the U.S. embassies or among your governments, are there digital training programs, and are there, let's say, private public cooperation to allow digital training to be distributed or disseminated among people in the countries? I don't know, I would imagine in Kazakhstan, maybe you have that, but does anyone else have this either in your country or know of other international organizations working on trying to develop digital training networks?
If I may, for Uzbekistan, we launched a campaign. It's called 1 Million Coders. So it is directed for young people and for women, where they can log in the online platform, and there is a speed is like a self-paced speed. They can learn coding from the beginning, from zero. This is done jointly with United Arab Emirates government, and it's proved to be successful because more and more people are engaging, not only students, but also people who are already working as well. On the other point, I think there are more and more IT academies and IT parks are created in Uzbekistan, where young people can learn, for example, for 6 months or 1 month, and after that they can already receive some freelance, how could I say, services, work from abroad. It may be from Japan or from other countries, and can already earn some income. So in that sense, there is a wide support from the government, with participation both of the private sector and international partners.
Yeah, I think that's an extremely important point. Are there others in any of the other countries? Anyone else want to jump in on this issue?
Ambassador Elliott, if you allow.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Just to make a little remark on this question and on what our chairman Mamadov said about the digital training. So firstly, let me just remind that our agency has a number of initiatives which are in our regions of Azerbaijan. This is a quite big SME Friends network. This is a one-man office in many regions, and we are planning to cover all Azerbaijan with this network. Also, we have already 5 SME development centers. The most important thing that they provide consultancy, mentoring, and preparation of business plans, and some seminars and webinars. And all of this is free of charge. And when I heard this question of Ambassador Sekuta, I just thought that in future, we can also integrate some of the services which are, or some of the opportunities which are provided in the American corners as a kind or as a part of our training programs, because this is very good in terms of the literacy raising, in terms of approximately English language skills for entrepreneurs, because it's also very important if they are going to enhance their supply chains, if they are going to enhance the access to markets, because here they also can need some foreign language skills, and much more important things as the literature, specified literature, which can be found in this American corners. So I think here we have not only in Azerbaijan, but in all countries participating in the CPC, there is a good opportunity to cooperate and to integrate these opportunities of the American corners to the practical dimensions. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. I think that's extremely important, and I'm glad to hear that, you know, in Azerbaijan, this kind of coordination and cooperation is occurring, because I do know, you know, again, it happened when I was in Tajikistan, and I've seen again in Uzbekistan and in Kazakhstan this kind of coordination. And I would say one of the issues is access, you know, to the internet. So giving people the ability to access the internet and to access training and organize training is extremely, extremely important. Well, I think we are just about out of, and we have answered most of the questions that have been posed. I think one, you know, final question, which maybe I can pose to any of you, but maybe to Chairman Ramazanova is, you know, we talked a little bit about empowering women entrepreneurs, but what segments of the, you know, of the business community? I mean, women, I think traditionally have looked for ways to work at home, but are there programs either in Kazakhstan or in the other countries that focus on helping women to be involved in what they traditionally haven't been involved in, whether it's the energy sector, whether it's the, you know, technology sector? And does Kazakhstan have programs to try to help develop women in these sectors that they haven't traditionally been involved in?
Благодарю, госпожа посол, за вопрос. Я хотела бы сказать, что, конечно же, в такой углеродобогатой стране, как Казахстан, процент женщин, которые в этих энергоемких отраслях экономики занимают лидирующие позиции, конечно же, низкий. Но он низкий, наверное, сопоставимо со всеми странами, которые имеют подобный расклад экономики. Мы сделали в прошлом году масштабное исследование, что же мешает продвигать женщин в секторе энергетики, какие стереотипы препятствуют этому. В рамках этого исследования, которое провела общественная организация, то есть это гражданский сектор сделал, ассоциация Казэнерджи, одним из итогов стало, что глава государства принял решение об увеличении и квотировании продвижения женщин на уровень принятия решения в в квазигосударственном секторе. Когда я говорю квазигосударственный сектор, я имею в виду, это 70% экономики Казахстана. Это энергетический сектор, нефтяная, горнорудная, угольная, атомная энергетика. Соответственно, теперь уже на уровне институциональном и законодательном у нас присутствие женщин в этих мужских традиционно секторах экономики будет доведено до 30%. Если мы возьмем государственную службу, мы как аналог привели. На государственной службе у нас 55% женщин. Уровень принятия решения уже мы 30 набрали, свыше 30. Соответственно, квазигосударственный сектор – это нефтяная, энергетическая, угольная отрасль, которая относится к квазигосударственному сектору, будет представлена женщинами тоже. Я 3 года подряд безуспешно пытаюсь пригласить в Казахстан организацию ЮНИДО. Я знаю, какой прекрасные кейсовые продукты они делают. Я очень надеюсь, что наше Министерство индустрии и инфраструктурного развития поработает именно с этой организацией, потому что они способствуют. Вот у них трехэтапное. Они обучают, они помогают им найти источники финансирования, они продвигают их продукцию именно в секторе переработки, промышленности. Я думаю, это вот будущие задачи, которые мы для себя ставим.
Well, thank you very much. I think that's extremely important that, obviously we have a saying in English, Rome wasn't built in a day, but means that, you don't completely integrate people into these new sectors, especially women overnight, but providing training and having goals, which I think I've heard all of our speakers today say is extremely important. So we're getting to the end of our time. And before I turn the program back over to Ifkan, I would just like to summarize with, first of all, thanks to all of our panelists for participating in today's discussion. I think what we have done is really looked at a wide variety of issues that face the region in terms of how do we promote innovation, how do we promote technology, and how do we also become inclusive and include not only women, but youth and people from rural areas, because as we know, a well-educated and economically rich population makes for stability and security in the region. So I'm extremely encouraged by everything I hear. For those of you who don't know, I started studying and working on Central Asia back in 1994 after the fall of the Soviet Union. And I've just seen among the countries of the region so much moving forward and so much coordination, interconnectivity, and focus on what will be, I think, making the region stronger. And I look at this region as the crossroads. You know, it was once maybe called the Silk Road, but really the countries of Central Asia and the Caspian region are extremely important for linking Europe and the US to countries, you know, to the east, to China and beyond. So I want to thank all of you again, and I want to, you know, thank Caspian Policy Center, as always, for including me in today's program. And I will now turn the program over to Efkan Nifty, our Executive Director.
Thank you, Ambassador Elliott, and thank you for incredible moderation of this panel. And I'd like to thank to our keynote speaker, Harry Bader, and all the speakers from the region. I really appreciate your insights, and I think this was a very fruitful panel, actually, very engaging panel. I think working to foster innovation and entrepreneurship in a fair and equitable manner is a vital building inclusive economic growth in the Caspian region. Caspian region is a resource-rich area, but we also value the new entrepreneurship and startups and also innovation in the region. It's very important for the future of the region, for economic diversification as well. And obviously, the economic empowerment of women in this economic growth is essential. Also, as we come to the conclusion of the 5th Trans-Caspian Forum, I'd like to thank all our participants, moderators, and viewers of joining us for these important conversations. Although Caspian does not often receive the attention it deserves as politically, economically, and militarily critical junction, we are pleased to see outstanding interest that this forum promotes. We had almost 200 participants from all over the region and also from the United States. I know time differences sometimes makes things challenging, but I'm glad to have using this online opportunities to include everyone. I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to our advisors and staff at the Caspian Policy Center, without whose hard work this endeavor would never be possible. In addition, I'd like to thank to our embassy partners, all the embassies of the Central Asia, the Caucasus, Afghanistan, and Turkey, for being part of this incredible initiative for 5 years now. Also, this year, it's incredible to have support of U.S. International Trade Administration, Department of Commerce, U.S. Foreign Commercial Service, and USAID for their invaluable assistance in bringing together our wonderful lineup of speakers. Going forward, I hope to see many of you again soon, either in person or online. I hope in person next year in our 6th Trans-Caspian Forum. Please continue to follow the work that we do at the CPC in our events and publications. If you have not already done so, I encourage you to follow us on social media and sign up for our email list to stay up to date on our busy programming calendar. Thank you again for tuning in for the 5th Annual Trans-Caspian Forum. At its heart, this forum is both about building connections between the countries and between people, most importantly. This ongoing conversation on how the United States and Caspian region, as well as how the Caspian countries themselves can bolster their cooperation, will continue well into the future, and we look forward to continue working with you, with everyone. And once again, thanks for tuning into TCF 5th Trans-Caspian Forum. And we wish you well from the Caspian Policy Center from Washington, D.C. Thanks all.